The Thing Under the Bed. Written by Winslow Swan. Audiobook narrated and produced by Edward James Beesley. My reasons for writing this will soon be abundantly clear as you read onward. I am supposed to be writing some sort of confession for the heinous crimes in which I have been accused of. Since no one will believe my spoken word, I thought that I would take the opportunity to write the whole thing down on paper. Well, perhaps then someone will believe me. Not that it will make much difference. I am doomed in any case. My name is Terry Grant, age 25, about 6 feet, and what I would consider good-looking. Case number D16579, currently residing in the mental ward of the State Correction Facility. My doctor assigned by the court is Philip Bartoli, a nice and likable man who sees in me just another case for examination to determine whether I am fit for trial. I keep telling him that there will never be a trial, but he insists on going on with test after test. I think that the best way to start will be to tell you when I first saw the thing that resides under my bed. I was 6 years old when we moved to the large house on Decatur Street in Wellesley Falls, Georgia. It was large, with 2 bedrooms upstairs and a full basement, which would become my own personal bedroom. With a younger brother, I've been forced to share a room for most of my young life, and now, with the move, I would have a place of my own where my dreams could become reality. Little did I know that my dreams would eventually become nightmares, to which there is no rational explanation for and no way of describing in any detail. Well, let me just say for the record that there were inordinate amounts of blood and gore associated with my dreams. The first night in my own bedroom, I was happy. I was not the sort of child that needed a nightlight or to be read a bedtime story to. I was quite content to lay on my bed in the dark, watching the shadows from the moonlight play across the ceiling as my eyes grew tired, and I would drift into a peaceful sleep. For almost a month, this was the routine in which my mind and body became accustomed to. The shadows would perform their little plays, and I would be lulled to sleep, and I would be lulled into a sleep that only angels could dream of. I think that it was the night before Thanksgiving when the thing made its presence known. Or perhaps it had been there the whole time and could see into my unconscious mind the dreams of fancy that I would have. Maybe it was jealous of the quiet way that a 6-year-old child could sleep without the use of a small light to chase away the monsters. I remember quite vividly, in fact, the low hissing and breathing that was just out of range of my hearing. I sat upright in my bed, my covers crumpled at the foot end of my bed, peering into the darkness that was staved off only by the light of the moon streaming into my window. I could see nothing, but the sound was definitely being emitted from somewhere in the room. It was much like the sound that you might hear from a gas leak, but there was the unmistakable repetition of breathing just under the hissing sound. I remember cocking my head to one side, trying to hear better, but the sound could not be placed to any one part of the room. Eventually, I grew tired and lay back down where I fell fast asleep, my dreams coming to me in waves of beauty and splendor. The following night, after stuffing myself with plate after plate of food from the feasts that Mom had prepared, I was ready for another night of dreaming. I woke up around midnight to the unmistakable sound of hissing and breathing. At first, I thought there were 2 distinct causes for the noises, but I could not tell exactly where each one was coming from. I decided to investigate and crawled out of the bed. As I stood beside the bed, scanning the darkened room, It was the first time that I actually felt the thing. The breathing became a little louder and stronger as I could feel a hot breath covering my legs and ankles. I let in a slight gasp and nearly jumped back into bed, pulling the covers over my head, but only briefly. I laughed a little, thinking how silly one must be to think that the down cover would protect me from some creature with razor-sharp claws and teeth. With each successive night for almost a week, the breathing would become louder. I could then distinguish the location of this weird phenomena. Whatever it was definitely under my bed. The first day of school, I decided to confide in the only person that I trusted with such information. I saw my best friend, John Pauls, on the bus and described to him in great detail about the events of the last few nights. Well, he simply shrugged his shoulders.
What does that mean?
I asked.
Well, sounds to me like you have a monster living under your bed,
he said in a matter-of-fact voice.
So what can I do?
I asked, fear for the first time beginning to make its presence known around my small and vulnerable heart.
Well, you could send out for a priest,
he told me.
That is supposed to be their job, from what I understand. I don't know anybody like that, John,
I said, and I think that he could hear the tremble in my voice.
Hey, it's probably nothing,
he reassured me.
Maybe just an old pipe under the floor or something. But what if it is a monster?
I asked.
Well, my dad says that you have to face whatever is making you scared. I would wait to hear the thing, then I would quickly look under the bed, take a flashlight and shine it right in his face,
he said.
What will that do? Everybody knows that monsters can't survive in the light,
he told me. I thought about the conversation the rest of the day, trying to formulate a battle plan to try and defeat the monster that I was sure was now residing under my bed. I would take the flashlight from the kitchen drawer and keep it with me all night. If I heard the thing, I would pounce on it with the bright light that I was sure would drive it away. Around 2 a.m, I finally heard the thing. I took a few deep breaths, trying to get my courage up and will my body to obey me. After my third breath, I jumped to the floor, squatting low, aimed the light under the bed, and pulled the sheets up to reveal... I cannot describe the ugliness of the thing, for I do not believe that such words are in the English language. All I can remember were the eyes of a penetrating green color full of evil and hate. Its skin was a dark gold color with bits of scale and flesh hanging from its emaciated body. All that I could see of its hands, if you would call them that, were covered in small versions of its eyes, green and glistening. The 7 fingers on each hand were like talons, each one with an eye on the end of it and a razor-like nail protruding past the eye. I shined the light all over the thing, waiting for it to vanish in a puff of smoke, but nothing happened. I saw the lipless mouth expand into what I can only now call a smile of darkness, showing razor teeth of silver. The breathing and hissing became louder and louder until the sound seemed to fill the entire room. I was frozen in fear, waiting for the thing to pounce on my small 6-year-old body, ripping flesh from bones, laughing the entire time. My feet refused to jump back up onto the bed and the safety of the down comforter. The thing stopped breathing and hissing, cocking its malformed head to one side as if listening for something. It lay motionless, looking past me, and then, to my horror, I saw the smile of evil cross the demented face.
Terry!
I heard the voice of my mother behind me, my eyes glued to the thing, wondering what was going to happen next.
What are you doing on the floor?
she asked. What happened next is hard to put down into words. The thing seemed to jump or fly, I wasn't sure which, past me. I could feel the hot breath as it exhaled. I heard my mother scream, a brief and terrible sound which lasted only a second. I heard the thing breathing and hissing excitedly. Bubbling noise invaded my ears, and I heard ripping and tearing sounds. I felt something warm and sticky around my knees and feet, and turned the light toward the floor, which was now covered in a red goo. "Mama," I whispered before fainting. I was later told in the hospital that my mother had been killed by a psychopath who had escaped from the hospital days before. There was no trace of him, and why he had not killed me was something that the police could never figure out. My father, my brother, and me moved out of the house that very night and stayed in one of those extended stay motels for about a month until my father could find us a suitable house to live in. We never spoke of the murder or the fact that I had possibly been a witness to it. I didn't dare tell the truth about what happened, the thing, and what it looked like. The first night at the hotel was a very restless night. I could not sleep. I was afraid to shut my eyes. Eventually, I managed to begin to drift off. The low hissing and breathing began again, and I was instantly awake. Perhaps I had upset the thing, and that was why it had taken my mother. Little kids are only supposed to hear the thing under the bed, but they are never, ever supposed to actually see it. I had broken that one cardinal rule that every kid knows but never talks about. I would leave the thing alone. Maybe it was like a bee, I told myself. As long as you didn't bother it, it would not bother you. For 13 years, I made it a point not to bother the thing. No matter where we lived or where I might stay at, I always heard the strange hissing and breathing coming from under the bed that I lay in. My father would take me and my brother on a trip, and we would spend the nights in hotels, and even there, I would hear the breathing of the thing under the bed. I never once dared to look again. It was a mistake that I made that brought the horror of my mother's death back. For 12 years, I had left the thing alone, getting to sleep at night by listening to the rhythmic breathing and hissing. I never stored anything under the bed like shoes or slippers for fear that I might accidentally invade its territory. It was April 21st when the second death in my life occurred, but with far different results. By some miracle, I had managed to get through the many sleepless nights of my youth and graduate high school. The night that the graduation ceremony was to take place, my father, now looking much older than his years, came into my room and sat down on the bed. "You are sure something to see, son," he told me. I could detect a slight wavering in his voice, and I knew that the emotion of the moment was beginning to get to him. "You doing okay, Dad?" I asked. "Oh, I just wish your mother was here to see this," he said. "Me too," I said as I stood by the closet on the opposite side of the room. I turned to the full-length mirror that hung on the door and began to brush my hair, preparing myself for that walk down the aisle to accept my diploma. "She sure would have been proud of you," he said. I watched his reflection as he wiped a tear from his face. I then froze in terror. Reflected in the mirror between my father's feet, I saw several eyes, green and hate-filled, slowly emerge from the darkness. I heard the low breathing and hissing grow louder and louder. "Dad, very slowly, get off the bed," I said, talking to his reflection. I'm all right, son, he said. It was the last thing that he did say. I watched in frozen terror as the thing grabbed my father's ankles, one in each claw-like hand. My dad was yanked onto the floor and in a flash was dragged under the bed. I heard a slight scream and watched as blood began to pour out from under the bed. I could hear the laughter of the creature as it tore away the flesh from the corpse of my father. Once again, I fainted. I found myself in the hospital, strapped to a bed and drugs being fed into me. Even through the drug-induced fog that was now my brain, I could still hear the breathing and hissing sounds coming from under the hospital bed. After a couple of days, 2 detectives interviewed me.
Can you, describe what happened?
One of them said.
My dad.
I choked out.
Well, perhaps tomorrow he would feel a little better talking to you,
the doctor had told them. I was left alone with my thoughts, my dreams, and the thing. Eventually, I was released. My father's murder was put up to yet another killer roaming the streets with several razors which he used to skin his victims alive while eating the flesh. I knew different. My brother came to me a few weeks later after our father's funeral. "Terry, don't you think it's time for you to tell me what happened?" he asked. "I did tell you, Frank," I said. He didn't like the answer and threw a fist in my general direction, which I managed to avoid. "God damn it! Don't give me that whole shit about Dad being pulled under the bed and eaten by some monster!" he screamed. "I can't change the facts," I told him quietly. He took a few deep breaths and managed to calm down. "Well, for the sake of argument," he began, "let us just assume that there is something under your bed. Why hasn't it ever attacked you?" I tried for over 12 years to answer that question myself. "I don't know, Frank," I told him, which did not help the situation. "Okay, let's try this a different way," he said. "Come with me." I followed him up the stairs to the bedroom that I had occupied. He went in, and Frank sat on the bed, much like my father had done a few weeks earlier. "This is where Dad was, right?" he asked. I only shook my head. "Where were you?" I walked over to the mirror and turned to face him. "That was it?" he asked. "That was it. Only I wasn't facing him. I was turned to the mirror and only saw the reflection." "Okay, so turn around, Terry," he said. I only stood there, frozen to the spot, my heart beating faster and faster. "What's the matter?" Frank asked. What if it gets you too?" I asked in a fearful whisper. "This is so much bullshit," he yelled. For the first time, I saw the thing. It had crept out from the other side of the bed, its body glistening with sweat. It was eyeing the back of my brother's head, smiling the entire time. It never made a sound. No hissing, no breathing, only the wicked smile, and I knew that I was about to witness the death of my brother. "There is nothing under the bed!" Frank yelled at me, making me jump. Frank pulled up the sheets and bent forward, looking at the empty space. He rose back up and smiled at me. "You see?" he asked. The thing stabbed a bony talon through Frank's throat, and blood spurted out, covering me. Frank gasped and choked, and I saw him look up into the hateful gaze of the thing. Another talon struck into Frank's back and appeared on the other side, splattering me with fresh blood, hot and sticky. For the first time, I screamed. The thing howled in delight as Frank shook like a rag doll at the end of the bony talons. With almost surgical precision, the thing began to slice Frank in two halves. Blood and gore spilling onto the floor. I ran from the house of death and pain down the street, screaming the entire time. I was found later, crouched into a fetal position, lying in the middle of a parking lot. The blood had dried onto my clothes, but I could not get the vision of my family out of my head. The police took me back to the hospital and eventually booked me not only for Frank's murder, but for the murder of my father. They tell me that they are looking back into my mother's death and that I may be charged with that one as well.
How could a 6-year-old child do such a thing?
I hear them ask each other. I believed that since my family was dead, the thing would leave me alone. The first night in the hospital, secluded away in a private cell-like room, I heard it breathing and hissing under my bed. Eventually, they moved me to the ward in the state prison where I now sit and write this so-called confession. Every night, I hear the thing breathing and hissing. I do not know why it decided that my family needed to die. I do know that it is very real and very lethal, and that perhaps it has brothers all over. Perhaps everyone has a thing that lives under their bed, waiting for just the right time to reveal its evil intentions. I lay awake most nights, here in this prison cell, listening to the thing and wondering when it will decide to devour me. I hope that it is soon. I am so very tired.
What are you reading?
Dr. Bartoli finished the last line and placed the tablet of paper on his bedside table, along with his glasses, and turned to his wife, who lay beside him reading her own book.
Oh, just a case that I drew in court,
he told her.
Poor soul,
she said.
Well, is he insane?
Not really sure at this point,
the doctor said.
What is he accused of?
She asked.
The murder of his father and brother,
he said.
Perhaps he even killed his mother when he was only 6 years old.
Oh, how awful,
she said, only catching every other word that her husband said.
Yes, it is.
The phone rang as Dr. Bartoli glanced at the clock, making a mental note of the time.
Now who would be calling us at almost midnight?
His wife asked.
Philip Bartoli speaking,
he said as he picked up the phone. He listened quietly before saying,
I will be there shortly.
Where are you off to?
His wife asked.
Who was that?
It was the prison,
he said as he got up and quickly dressed.
What could be so urgent that it couldn't wait until the morning?
My patient committed suicide,
he told her, and made his way down the stairs and to the garage.
We had to say something, didn't we?
The guard that had called Philip Bartoli and was now escorting the doctor to the hospital wing was having a difficult time explaining the circumstances that surrounded the death of the prisoner. He was stumbling over his words and trying not to look directly at the doctor, knowing that anything he said would seem like a lie. It took several minutes to get through the security that had tightened up to a level of extreme that even Bartoli found to be excessive. At every gate, he was showing his identification, even to the guards that knew him on a first-name basis. No one, no matter how important they may or may not have been, was getting in the hospital section of the prison without being absolutely sure that they were who they said they were. The warden, John Marlowe, was waiting for Philip in the observation room. A bank of television monitors glowed silently in the small and cramped space. Each screen was tuned to a different room or hallway covering every inch of the hospital ward. John sat at the center console, the image of the prisoner's cell frozen on the middle monitor.
"John, what happened?"
Bartoli asked.
"This is something that you will have to see,"
the warden said before switching on a playback of the video. Philip sat next to the warden and stared at the screen. The camera was positioned in an upper corner of the room and covered everything in the tiny cell. Terry, the prisoner, sat on the bed, his head buried in his hands, breathing softly.
How did he do it?"
Philip asked.
"Just wait, and maybe you can tell us,"
the warden said. The doctor kept his eyes on the screen. On the video, Terry slowly looked up at the camera and mouthed the words, "It is here," when in a violent motion he was yanked by his ankles and disappeared under the bed. The video then went blank.
"What happened?"
Philip asked.
"There is a blank space at the video,"
the warden said.
"but only for about 15 seconds. Just keep watching."
Philip waited, silently counting the seconds before the picture came back on. What greeted him on the screen made him gasp with horror.
"What the hell happened?"
he asked, his heart pounding with fear.
"This is what we are trying to find out. A forensic team came a little while ago, and even they are stumped. That doctor said that he had never seen anything like it in 30 years of working for the CSI."
"So who called it suicide?"
Bartoli asked.
"That was my call. Had to say something to get you down here,"
the warden said.
"You want to see the body?"
"You mean what is left of it?"
Philip said. Terry Grant had been torn in half down the length of his entire body. His blood covered the walls like a fresh coat of paint, and parts of his internal organs were scattered along the floor. His intestines were hung around the ceiling, still dripping with blood and steam from the warmth of the body.
"Oh, God. Where is his head?"
the doctor asked, trying desperately not to throw up.
"We couldn't find it,"
was the matter-of-fact reply from the warden.
"Our video team is looking at the tape now, frame by frame, to see who could have done this."
Not who, the doctor thought to himself, but what creature that even he knew lurked somewhere under Terry's bed, no matter where he slept. When the two men returned to the observation room, the young technician called them over to the video monitor.
I need a fresh pair of eyes,"
the young man said, and flicked a switch.
"What the hell is that?"
the warden asked.
"You tell me,"
the technician answered.
"It only appears on this frame just before the whole system goes down."
The doctor moved in for a closer look. He tilted his head, squinted his eyes, stepped back slowly, trying to get the image to come into focus. It was like looking at one of those 3D pictures, where just when you could finally make out the image, it would disappear again.
"Can you clean it up?"
the warden asked. The technician typed a few commands into the keyboard. The picture swiped several times across the screen, With each successive time, the picture grew sharper and clearer.
Jesus,
the technician said.
No,
said Dr. Bartoli.
I think that you would have to look a lot further south for that thing.
The face that appeared on the screen was pure evil. The eyes seemed to burn into the very soul of the three men. 3 more sets of eyes covered the area where the cheeks should be. From the elongated head, grotesque and out of proportion with the body, there was hanging flesh and hair. The most distinct feature was the razor-sharp teeth, exposed in a grin that froze the blood of the men.
Sir, we found this,
a detective said as he entered the room. Inside of the evidence bag was an envelope covered in blood. In a deeper red was Dr. Bartoli's name.
I guess that this is for you,
the warden said. A cold chill ran up the doctor's spine as he reached for the plastic bag. He could feel the hatred emanating off the contents as he slipped it out and placed it on the table. Using the forceps, the detective slowly opened the envelope and retrieved the single piece of paper that was inside. The men watched carefully as he began to unfold the note.
What does that mean?
the warden said.
Only 2 words,
the doctor said.
You're next.
I'm home, dear. The doctor had managed to get away from the brutal crime scene at the prison by 3 in the morning. He was sure that his wife would be asleep, but called out anyway. Making his way up the stairs, he decided that since he was awake anyway, he would go over the confession of his patient. Perhaps there was something that he had missed that would have prevented the tragic events of the night. How could someone do that to themselves? The warden had asked him.
I have seen and read many cases where patients have bitten into their own wrist to commit suicide,
he had answered. He knew that there was no way Terry could have done what had happened to himself. He also knew that there was no such creature living under the bed that would have killed all of those people, and then Terry. No, there was a reasonable explanation, and the doctor was determined to find it. The bedroom was dark, and he decided not to wake his wife by turning the lights on. He managed to quietly get undressed and crawl into the bed without making too much noise. Pulling the covers up close to his chin, he closed his eyes, trying to get the image of Terry and the picture of the thing out of his mind. The breathing and hissing sound began a few moments later, followed by a low chuckle. The doctor jumped out of the bed and ran for the light switch, bathing the room in a bright light.
Honey, are you okay?
He asked his wife. He crept over to the bed and slowly removed the covers. His wife's face was frozen and contorted in a look of sheer terror. Her eyes had been gouged out and lay on her neck. Her chest had been torn open. Her organs were completely removed. The doctor began to scream in unison to the demonic laugh that emitted from under the bed. Epilogue. The butler did it.
Chills run up and down your spine There's a creeping sensation at the back of your neck. You're listening to Doorway to Nightmare. Join me, Artemis Black, as we venture through into a world of the strange and uncanny. Here's a sample of what we mean.
You just had to do it, didn't you, Owen?
You have no idea what I've seen.
I don't care what you have seen. It's just like all the other jobs, good jobs, that you have been fired from because you won't stop asking questions.
Don't you think that I have a right to know what I'm hauling around all night long?
For the kind of money that you're making, I wouldn't care if you were driving around with a truck full of drugs and dead bodies.
Join us. We will be lurking for you.
If you'd like to support us, visit our merchandise store. T-shirts, caps, mugs, and so much more. Visit doorwaytonightmare.com today.